The Los Angeles Dodgers built their entire 2024 offseason around one man. Every decision, every lineup construction, every marketing campaign, all of it pointed towards Shohei Ohtani. When the Dodgers signed him to a $700 million, $10-year contract in December 2023, the largest contract in professional sports history, the message was unambiguous. This organization was restructuring its identity around the greatest two-way player the sport has ever produced. Most players who signed with the Dodgers understood this reality before they ever set foot in the clubhouse. They accepted it, some embraced it. But not everyone processed that reality the same way. Kim Ha-seong arrived at the Dodgers carrying expectations he had built over years of professional baseball. In the KBO League, Kim was a standout. During his time with the San Diego Padres, he established himself as a legitimate major league infielder, a player with real defensive skill and a respectable offensive profile. He was not a fringe roster player. He was a proven commodity with a professional reputation. When he joined the Dodgers, he carried those credentials with him, along with a natural competitive ambition that any professional athlete in his position would possess. But the environment he walked into was unlike anything in professional baseball. The Dodgers clubhouse had been reorganized, both culturally and strategically, around Ohtani. The lineup was built to maximize his plate appearances. The pitching schedule was constructed to accommodate his throwing program. Every media interaction on every road trip circled back to Ohtani. Cameras followed him everywhere. Every headline carried his name. For a player like Kim, who had worked for years to build his own professional identity, the experience of existing in that orbit carried a psychological weight that clearly became difficult to manage. What happens to a competitive professional athlete when that athlete's contributions are consistently absorbed into someone else's narrative? The answer in Kim's case played out over weeks. Sources close to the situation describe a frustration that built quietly but steadily. The kind of tension that doesn't announce itself, it accumulates. Game after game, headline after headline, each one reinforcing the same reality. In this clubhouse, there was Ohtani, and then there was everyone else. For Kim, that gap apparently became impossible to accept. The breaking point, according to multiple accounts, arrived after one game too many in which Ohtani dominated every post-game conversation, while Kim's contributions went largely unnoticed by the broader media and fan base. What happened next is what players inside that clubhouse have described as unlike anything ever witnessed in a professional setting. The post-game environment was routine, players unwinding, staff moving through normal responsibilities, the kind of organized noise that fills a major league clubhouse after a game. Kim was visibly agitated. People in the room noticed before anything was said. His body language communicated something was wrong. Then the moment arrived. Kim Ha-seong raised his voice loudly enough to stop the room. In a space filled with some of the highest-paid athletes on the planet, where professional composure is essentially a baseline expectation, Kim directed a statement at Shohei Ohtani that silenced everyone within earshot. The words were blunt and deliberate. Shohei is a loser. That statement, delivered loudly in a room full of his own teammates, was not the end. Kim followed it with additional personal commentary, calculated and direct, that went beyond a heat-of-the-moment remark. This was not an accidental slip of frustration. Veterans who were present described it as a targeted attack on a teammate's character. The room reacted immediately. Players got to their feet. Voices were raised in response. The professional order that normally governs a major league clubhouse shattered in real time. People who have spent careers in professional locker rooms, players who have seen conflict, disagreement, and the inevitable friction that comes with championship pressure, describe this moment as something categorically different. Not a heated argument between two players with competing on-field frustrations. Something more serious, a public, deliberate attempt to undermine the person around whom the entire franchise was built. Eyewitness reactions confirmed that the room understood immediately what had just occurred. Kim Ha-seong had crossed a line that professional athletes understand instinctively, even if it is rarely spoken aloud. There is a difference between competitive jealousy and public humiliation of a teammate. Kim chose the latter, and in doing so, he forced everyone in that room to make an immediate decision about where they stood. Shohei Ohtani was present. He heard every word. The man who has maintained a level of composure throughout his professional career that analysts and teammates alike have described as almost supernatural, that composure visibly broke. Teammates reported an expression on his face that they had genuinely never seen before. Not anger, not aggression, something closer to shock, the kind that registers when an attack comes from a direction no one anticipated. For a few seconds, Ohtani stood still. The greatest active player in professional baseball, a man who had just signed the largest contract in sports history, stood in his own clubhouse and absorbed an unprovoked public insult from a teammate. Every person in that room watched it happen. And then, in what multiple sources identified as the most telling moment of the entire incident, Ohtani said nothing. No verbal retaliation, no escalation. He composed himself and walked away. That response tells a more complete story about Ohtani's character than perhaps anything that has happened during his time with the Dodgers. He understood instinctively that engaging with Kim's outburst would serve no one, not himself, not his teammates, not the organization. His decision to absorb the moment without retaliation demonstrated a level of emotional discipline that even professional athletes rarely achieve under pressure. But the impact of what he experienced did not disappear simply because he chose not to respond. Every player in that room watched OHTANI absorb something deeply unfair, and that image stayed with them. Word reached Andrew Friedman within hours. As the Dodgers' president of baseball operations, Friedman has built his reputation on analytical precision and calculated decision-making. He is not a reactive executive. His track record across his career, from Tampa Bay to Los Angeles, reflects an approach built on deliberate evaluation and long-term thinking. This is not a man who makes impulsive personnel decisions, which is precisely why the speed of what happened next carried so much weight. Friedman placed Kim Ha-seong on the trade market immediately. There was no extended evaluation period, no series of internal meetings stretched across days. The decision, according to sources familiar with the situation, required no deliberation because the parameters of the situation left no room for ambiguity. Kim's behavior inside the clubhouse had not simply crossed a line, it had attacked the foundation upon which the Dodgers' competitive structure rested. Protecting clubhouse culture is as important as lineup decisions. That principle, confirmed by sources close to the organization, reflects a philosophy the Dodgers have maintained consistently through their run of sustained success. Championships are not built exclusively through talent acquisition. They are built through environments where that talent can function cohesively under pressure. What Kim had done was not just disrespect a teammate, he had threatened the internal stability of a clubhouse carrying championship expectations. The message Friedman sent by moving quickly was heard clearly by every person inside that organization. This behavior will never be tolerated. The Dodgers were willing to absorb the operational disruption of trading an established infielder mid-season rather than allow the incident to sit unaddressed. That willingness to prioritize culture over convenience communicated something no speech or team meeting ever could. The cost of attacking a teammate in this organization is removal from this organization. The locker room rallied. Veterans who had been in the room when it happened reached out privately to OHTANI in the hours that followed. The consensus among players was not only support for OHTANI personally, but agreement with Friedman's decision. Kim's words did not reflect how teammates felt about OHTANI or his role on the team. The opposite was true. The vast majority of the roster had adapted to and accepted the reality that OHTANI's presence made the entire franchise better, including each of them individually. His visibility elevated the Dodgers' profile in ways that benefited every player wearing that uniform. The incident tested the unity of the Dodgers clubhouse in a way that few situations can. Conflict of this nature, introduced suddenly and without warning, has the capacity to fracture a team. It exposes underlying tensions, forces players to take sides, and creates a psychological residue that follows a team through critical stretches of a season. But the response from the Dodgers roster appears to have produced the opposite effect. Players reported a sense of collective clarity in the aftermath, a shared understanding of what the team stood for and what it was willing to protect. The incident, as damaging as it was in the moment, may have reinforced rather than weakened the group's identity. The trade market reality for Kim Ha-seong is complicated by factors that are now impossible to separate from the incident. Multiple teams have expressed interest following confirmation of his availability. Kim is a legitimate major league player with defensive versatility and a track record of professional production. Under ordinary circumstances, his availability would generate meaningful competition from organizations looking to add infield depth. But these are not ordinary circumstances. Every team engaged in trade conversations with the Dodgers is aware of exactly why Kim is being moved. In professional baseball, that context matters. Teams must evaluate not only a player's statistical profile, but the circumstances under which his previous employer chose to part with him. Clubhouse incidents of this magnitude do not remain private for long, and any organization acquiring Kim will be doing so with full knowledge of what transpired. That knowledge carries weight in negotiations and will affect the return the Dodgers can reasonably expect. Whether Kim Ha-seong can reconstruct a professional reputation after a moment of this visibility remains an open question. His on-field ability is not in dispute, but professional baseball is a small world, and the details of what happened in that Dodgers clubhouse will follow him. The coming days of trade conversations will define the next chapter of his career, a chapter he created the necessity for through a single, catastrophic decision. Talent alone never wins championships, trust and unity do. That principle sits at the center of how the Dodgers have approached roster construction throughout their sustained run of success. The franchise has consistently demonstrated a willingness to move productive players when those players create cultural friction that outweighs their on-field contributions. This is not a new posture. It is a documented pattern of organizational behavior. Kim attempted to introduce something corrosive into an environment built on collective professionalism. The organization responded by removing that element before it could do further damage. The decisiveness of that response, the speed, the clarity, the absence of equivocation reaffirmed something the Dodgers have always claimed about themselves. That culture is not a secondary consideration. The Dodgers' championship window remains fully intact. OHTANI continues to function as the most complete player in the sport. The roster around him remains one of the deepest in professional baseball. The incident created disruption, but disruption of this kind, handled decisively, can paradoxically strengthen a team's foundation. Organizations that demonstrate they will protect their culture under pressure build a different kind of trust than those that allow incidents to linger unaddressed. Shohei Ohtani has a history of responding to adversity through performance. That pattern has repeated itself throughout his career, in Japan with the Nippon Ham Fighters, during his early years with the Los Angeles Angels, and now as the centerpiece of the Dodgers. When external circumstances have challenged him, his answer has consistently arrived in the form of production. Home runs, strikeouts, performances that reframe whatever conversation surrounded him before he stepped onto the field. The words Kim Ha-seong directed at him inside that clubhouse were heard by everyone present. They will not be forgotten by anyone who was in that room. But Ohtani's response, his immediate composure, his refusal to escalate, his decision to let the moment pass without retaliation, communicated something that no stat line ever could. His character in that moment was tested in front of his peers, and it held. The baseball world will continue to watch what Ohtani does next. He will answer in the only language that matters, with his bat. And given everything that has already been established about who he is as a competitor, there is very little reason to believe that language will be anything but exceptional.